Clara is 42, and her life is a predictable cycle of bookkeeping, dodging passive-aggressive texts from her ex-husband about a vintage fondue set, and applying thick layers of retinol. Romance is a concept she neatly filed away under discontinued lines years ago. At 11:45 p.m. on a Tuesday, her doorbell rings. In her neighborhood, a midnight visitor means a prank, an emergency, or a killer. Clara grabs a heavy wooden rolling pin from the kitchen counter and slowly creeps toward the dark foyer. Through the peephole, she sees a man who looks like he escaped from a high-end fashion magazine. He has sharp cheekbones, perfectly dark hair, and shoulders that make the porch light look like a theatrical spotlight. He wears a tailored black suit with the top buttons undone. Clara opens the door just far enough for the security chain to catch. She is wearing fuzzy penguin pajamas and a t-shirt that says, "World's Okayest Accountant." As their eyes lock, an unexpected jolt of electricity ripples down her spine, the first time her stomach has flipped for a man in at least 5 years. The man introduces himself as Julian. He claims to have moved into the old Blackwood house at the end of the lane, a Victorian estate that hasn't had plumbing since the 90s. He says a package of his was delivered to her by mistake. Clara spots a heavy wooden crate on her porch. She moves to lift it, but Julian steps forward. He picks up the 90-pound box with one hand as if it were a box of tissues. When Clara asks if he does CrossFit, Julian just offers a low, melodic laugh. As he takes the crate, his hand brushes hers. His skin is shockingly cold, like marble left out in the winter air, but the contact sends a physical spark of heat up her arm. Julian turns and walks down the driveway with impossible, silent fluidity. Clara stands on her porch in the cool night air, wondering if her new night cream is causing vivid hallucinations. 3 days later, Julian walks into Clara's office. He ignores the local shops and divorce cases she usually handles, asking instead for a master accountant to manage his family's complicated, multi-generational estate. He places a leather-bound ledger on her desk. The thick parchment pages are covered in elegant calligraphy detailing international accounts. Clara notes the records date back to the early 1800s. The staggering volume of transactions suggests historical wealth that doesn't align with his apparent age. While reviewing a trust fund established in 1902, Clara finds a birth year listed for the beneficiary, 1901. The name on the document is Julian Vance. She laughs and asks if this is Julian's great-grandfather. Julian doesn't laugh. He simply sits there with a calm, steady intensity. He tells her flatly, "It is me." Clara is a master of logic and mathematics, but looking at the authentic, aged parchment, and then back at Julian's unblemished face, the data begins to point toward a reality that violates every rule of her profession. The consultations move to Julian's estate, a house filled with Gothic architecture and a startling lack of mirrors. While Clara circles figures on her legal pad, Julian sits at a grand piano, playing a complex, haunting piece of music without looking at the keys. Julian identifies the music as an unreleased sonata by Franz Liszt. He tells Clara that Liszt taught him personally in Paris back in 1888. When Clara suggests he's role-playing, Julian stops. In a literal fraction of a second, faster than Clara's eyes can track, he is standing right in front of her, inches from her face. He traces her jawline with cold fingers and parts his lips, allowing 2 sharp canine fangs to slide into view. He explains he is 125 years old, and he hasn't been interested in the world for a century until he saw Clara with her rolling pin. Clara stares at the fangs, then at his glowing amber eyes. She takes a breath and asks if he has a valid social security number or if he's been committing identity theft since the Eisenhower administration. Julian breaks into a booming laugh. Most people look at him with fear or greed, but Clara treats him like a man with a massive tax liability. This grounded, sharp-edged pragmatism is exactly what he's been looking for. Julian leans in, drawing Clara closer. But the tension is broken by her phone. The screen lights up with a call from her ex-husband, Richard. Richard likely wants to know about a leaf blower manual. Julian offers to eat him, suggesting it could look like a tragic gardening accident. Clara snorts and tells him they're keeping things legal for now. The next evening, Richard shows up at Clara's door in a golf polo, puffing his chest out to argue about a lawnmower warranty. He condescendingly asks if Julian is Clara's son's friend. Richard represents the most exhausting parts of Clara's domestic history. His presence on her porch is a blunt reminder of the mundane life she's lived, one Julian is currently threatening to upend. Julian steps out of the shadows. He is wearing a leather jacket and radiating a quiet, ancient authority that instantly shuts Richard up. To settle the argument, Julian grabs the iron railing of Clara's porch. With a casual squeeze, he warps the solid metal like it's soft clay, leaving a deep imprint of his hand in the bar. Richard makes a small, high-pitched choking sound, turns on his heel, and sprints for his SUV. He speeds away, effectively removing himself from Clara's future. Julian apologizes for the property damage, his gaze turning vulnerable. When he finally kisses Clara, his cold skin is met by a sudden, consuming heat. It is deep, slow, and far more interesting than a tax audit. As they break apart under the stars, Clara realizes that Julian doesn't see a middle-aged accountant with back pain. He sees a masterpiece. Her 42nd year is turning out to be anything but ordinary.